How does Windows 10 OS handle data using New Technology File System (NTFS)? Main objective. The main objective is to research how does an operating system, specifically Windows 10, handles data using NTFS, provide a background overview of NTFS, research the benefits and disadvantages of NTFS, and finally in this video is titled The Technical Aspects of NTFS. Background on NTFS. NTFS basically is a file system for Windows 10 and Windows Server versions and possesses basic features such as file system formats, clustered shared volumes, rich metadata, encryption and security descriptors. File system formats defines what type of format data is stored on a storage device, addresses hardware blocks. Common sizes for x86 is 512 bytes for a clustered shared volume, and the metadata explains file placement and directories, which is crucial for a file system.
The history of NTFS. NTFS is an abbreviation of New Technology File System. This file system was developed by Microsoft to meet the requirements of business applications and introduced in July 1993 with Windows NT 3.1. It was a bit slower compared to the widespread FAT file system in these times, but it was used some of Unix principles of reliability, sharing, and security, and that was more important to corporation users. NTFS file systems was introduced as an important part of Windows NT security and reliability. As a software development companies that specialize in data recovery software, we can confirm that NTFS is really much better compared to the FAT file system. The chances of getting your data back is far higher than NTFS disk rather than FAT file system. But security and reliability was not so important for home users. Since the performance was dramatic compared to the FAT file system, the most advanced feature was also neglected by home users. Of course, who needs logical disks more than 32 gigabytes? In 1993, it was a huge amount of data. Quite large HDDs was about 1 gigabyte total. There was also nobody who needed to create files more than 4 gigabytes. It is normal nowadays to create backups, images of DVDs and Blu-rays. Disk already comes with 27 gigabytes of data. These factors forced Microsoft to develop and maintain two completely different operating systems, Windows 9 and Windows NT families. This state of affairs was until 2000 Microsoft released new version of Windows NT family, Windows 2000. It was robust as previous NTs and was almost as simple as useful as Windows 9X. The HSDs were larger, and the people also wanted more from OS at all and file systems in particular. The benefits of NTFS. NTFS is able to write smaller files much faster than a file system like FAT32. Moreover, the file size is not limited by intelligently selecting the sectors to be written. The file system reduces the problems of fragmentation and minimizes the need for constant defragmentation. Data is lost less frequently with NTFS because the file system recognizes damaged sectors faster than removes the file stored there. The recoverability designed into NTFS is such that a user should have to run a disk repair program on the NTFS volume. NTFS guarantees the consistency of the volume by using standard transaction, logging, and recovery techniques. In the event of a system failure, NTFS uses its log file and checkpoint information to automatically restore the file system. More benefits are it has faster access speeds, NTFS minimizes the number of disk access required to find a file, files and folders security. On NTFS volumes, you can set file permissions on files and folders that specify which groups and users have access to them and what levels of access are permitted. NTFS files and folders permission apply both to users working on the computer where the file is stored and users accessing the file over the network when the file is shared. With NTFS, you can also set permissions that operate on shared folders in combinations with file folder permissions. Also, Windows 2000 can format up to 2 terabytes in size with NTFS. The boot sector is backed up to a sector at the end of the volume. NTFS supports a native encryption called Encryption File System, EFS, using a public key security to prevent unauthorized access to file content. Also, NTFS functionality can be extended by using points, enabling new features such as volume mounts. This codes can be set limiting the amounts of space users can consume on an NTFS volume. These are the different types of benefits the NTFS consists of.
Real-world examples of NTFS is that its competition towards other file systems is that it can run files faster than those of smaller size, minimize need of defragmentation, recognizes damaged sectors and damaged partitions, and allows data transfer between Apple and Windows OS. Although it's proprietary Windows OS software, this shows an advanced level of a mail service that it provides over a large evolution of products. Access control list is a designated feature for NTFS. Access control lists help increase security and IT efficiency of a company, help regulate traffic, help monitor traffic, and help increase security and efficiency. For example, access control can help a file be separated and segregated for a manager's use in a consumer's profile and a CEO's profile. For instance, what this does is that it helps a user differentiate between a user and admin or a different profile altogether. The definition of discretionary access control is a model of access control based on access being determined by the owner of the resource in question. So this is access control determined by the owner of the resource. Mandatory access control, the definition according to Wikipedia, is access control created by a central authority, manager, or network administrator. Access control helps systems engineers control a company's servers by providing access to helping organize data. This bridges the gap between operating systems and a system administrator, bridging the gap between the field of networking and operating systems. One feature is alternative data stream, which stores resource forks allowing for NTFS to use files. This is commonly used for security, and you can use a program called streams to check data is corrupted on a separate stream. This is often used, again, for security of a system. Now, what the concept of a fork is essentially an inheritance of a process that creates a child process that is dictated by the parent process, or dependent on the parent process. Evolution of NTFS can stem from the FAT source software and is inherited based on this FAT software. This evolution from the Windows NT file systems that run on old DOS computers can still be today, however, is not backwards compatible with this type of file system. Practically, NTFS started with Windows 2000 plus and is still used today in Windows 11. Each computer can have their own control over each file. NTFS is still used and is one of the best file systems today in comparison to its competitors such as FAT32. NTFS works on many different levels. It uses an advanced file system technology, and extended features previously covered allow a user to do much more. File compression. File compression allows for a file to be compacted in size, whichever size it is, megabytes or gigabytes. This is done using NTI software, and this is exclusively done. File compression is exclusively done on NTFS software. After Windows 10, separate algorithms are also in use other than NZNTI. Later on, algorithms help making the file less corruptive and more intuitive. This is an issue of security by encrypting and compressing at the same time, which is an issue with NZNTI. Two other common features are quotas and encryption. File quotas are disk usage running and the scheduling strategy that limits the disk usage of a user in terms of a certain partition. This can be controlled by the administrator of the computer. And encryption files. Encryption is also used in NTFS and uses an encryption key and a decryption key. And the basics of encryption is ciphering data so that the user is unable to read it in plain text.
Hello, I'm Dharun. I'm going to talk about technical components of NTFS. First, partition boot sector. A volume boot record, frequently called a partition boot sector, is a type of boot sector stored on a particular partition on a hard disk drive or other storage devices that contains the necessary computer code to start the boot process. Data streams and locking mechanisms. Locking mechanisms are a way for databases to produce the sequential data output without the sequential steps. The locks provide a method for securing the data that is being used so no deviation can occur, like lost data or additional data that can be added because of the loss of a transaction. Master file table. The NTFS file system contains a file called master file table or MFT. This is at least one entry in the MFT for every file on an NTFS file system volume, including the MFT itself. All information about a file, including its size, time, and date stamps, permissions, and data content, is stored either in MFT entries or in space outside the MFT that is described by MFT entries. Series of meta files. The .meta file is the identification of a specific file when it's imported inside the assets folder. The .meta file is the identity. Then the .meta are like the soul of our files that reside within the project of Unity. These appear as an invisible in our Explorer or Finder and are generated by Unity when we import or create an asset, example a script, a material, or a 3D model, etc.
In conclusion, we covered the main objectives, background, history, benefits, features, evolution, competitors, and technical components of this file system, and we covered how each one is used and applied and the underlying technology of how each one works.